I'm really excited about this topic of growing awareness. And when I think of growing awareness, I think it entails being alive, awake, and aware in our spirituality. We read in the Bible in Thessalonians 5:6. So then let us not sleep as others do, but let us keep awake and be sober. We must keep awake to grow in our awareness of our spirituality, of who we are and who we've come here to be. In The Magic of Mind, Ernest Holmes wrote these words: "The great and only awakening that can ever come to man is when he becomes aware of the fact that that which enables him to think, to be conscious, to be creative, is the mind of God active within him." The mind of God active within us. That's what keeps us alive and aware and awake to spirit. You know that every time I come, I have a question for you. So here's the question for the week. What's the one choice that you can make today so that you stay alive in your spirituality, awake to the path before you, and aware of God in and as your life, opening your eyes, your ears, your mind, and your heart? Let me repeat that. What is the one choice that you can make today so that you stay alive in your spirituality, awake to the path before you, and aware of God in and as your life, opening your eyes, your ears, your mind, and your heart? I said that awareness was about being alive, awake, and aware in our spirituality. So I want to start with being alive in spirit. What does it mean to be alive and conscious in spirit? One of the definitions of alive is knowing or realizing the extent of something. So when we say we're alive in spirit, it's about realizing the existence of spirit right within us. Ernest Holmes put it this way: what does it mean to be alive? It means that infinite love is expressing as form. Infinite love is expressing as you, as me, in these forms of our bodies. I was thinking a couple weeks about my childhood and when we used to go to St. Petersburg and we'd get in these glass-bottom boats and go out and look at all the beautiful coral reefs. And as I was thinking about that, I realized that really a coral reef is a great analogy for what our spirituality is like. First, did you know that there are relatively few species that are responsible for actually building the framework of a coral reef? That framework on which all these other animals and plants take refuge? There has to be a structure to a coral reef to exist, and that's why so many of them show up around sunken boats. Both coral and algae are able to extract calcium bicarbonate from seawater and combine them into a substance that's called limestone, which is essential for constructing the skeleton of the reef. Now, don't worry, I'm not going to give you a biology lesson on coral reefs. I'm definitely not qualified to do that. But many people don't realize that everything on those reefs is actually living animals. And our spirituality is a lot like coral reefs. We need a structure to keep it alive. Now, for some people, that structure might be this community. For other people, it might be their spiritual practices. For people like myself, it's a combination of both my spiritual community and my spiritual practices. In Love and Law, Ernest Holmes wrote this: "To become alive and build the greatest lives, we must become something more, something worthwhile. There's not a day in my life that goes by that I do not take the time to unify myself and my consciousness with big things, to which I am one with all activities, all industries, all commerce. And he goes on. Then you are one with the infinite stars in the heavens, and that is to see things. It is that in our mental attitude that decides what we are to become, and nothing else. So how do we unify ourselves with big things? When you see a coral reef, it might look like one big plant, but everything around that coral reef is moving and growing. A lot of animals make up that reef. Some really latch onto it, other ones swim through and use it for cover. But the coral and the algae are the basis of the structure. You know, they actually shed their skeletons and recreate themselves, becoming new again. And I think like us, sometimes we have to shed the things that aren't working for us and recreate ourselves, moving to some higher level of consciousness. Our meditation song today and the opening song, All That I Am, remind us that all that we are is part of this one big life. A loving spirit dwells in us. Michael Beckwith said this: God has a gift to give the world as you, beyond what your surface mentality may sometimes see. So when you commit to discovering and expressing your faculty of divine creativity, what emerges is living and expressing from a deeper dimension of your being. When we commit to fully stepping into our own divine creativity, what emerges is something deeper within ourselves, something at a higher level of consciousness. And once we become alive, we attach ourselves to communities or to others, and they give us stability to our spirituality. So how do we stay awake in this growth? Awake means to cease sleeping, to become aroused or active again, to become conscious or aware of something. To be awake in spirit means to become consciously aware of the spirit that's within each of us. We are a part of this big whole universe, of this divine order of the world. Each of us has our part to play. We're part of that one life that's God's life, and that's our life, that unity of being. And it's up to you. Ernest Holmes wrote this: we try to awaken man to an inherent divinity and perfection which is in every living soul. Our whole process is an awakening. The spiritual nature never sleeps, and something in you and in me senses that imprisoned splendor. I don't know about you, but I don't want my splendor to be imprisoned. Did you know that coral reefs actually flourish even though they're surrounded by ocean water that provides very few nutrients for them? They flourish because each part of the reef contributes. Some depositing skeletons to the reef, and so that the reef can be firmly rooted. Others move in and out and bring or deposit some things that are needed. But each thing that's part of the reef is part of that whole and is necessary for the reef to thrive. When we're awake in spirit, we're conscious of being a part of something bigger than we are. We're conscious of being awake to the knowing that everything we need is right where we are. Everything we need is right where we are, and we can thrive no matter what. I doubt that the coral reef gives much thought to the fact that it might not thrive, because there is an essence in that reef of that structure that allows it to thrive, even among ocean water that doesn't provide it very many nutrients. Can you imagine what the world might be like if everyone believed that everything we need is right where we are, and that we could thrive no matter what? And if we believe that to the same extent that we believe that the sky is blue, or that healthy grass is green, or that sugar is sweet, snow is white, we don't question those things. Why do we question that everything we need is right where we are, when our philosophy tells us that the divine provides for us? It is God's great pleasure to give us the kingdom. What happens when you become awakened to the divine nudge and truly rooted in the knowing that you can thrive? Even when you might be surrounded by oceans of beliefs or people that don't provide you the nutrients that you would like, or don't have the, or that perhaps are not like-minded. Imagine life knowing that your divinity is as deeply rooted as you know that sugar is sweet. In The Science of Mind, we read that the universe is a spiritual system impregnated with divine ideas and peopled with spiritual forms. The ideas of God are perfect laws on their way to producing complete and perfect effects. The universe is alive, conscious, awake, and aware. It is love and life. It is law and order. It is a cosmos. Love and light, law and order, a cosmos. Once we're alive with spirit and awake to spirit, it's time to become aware of how spirit shows up within each of us on this planet. It's time to listen to those divine nudges that we often ignore. I know I'm guilty of that. Aware is defined as having or showing realization, perception, or knowledge. Being aware in spirit means that we have a realization or a knowledge of who we are, of how spirit is dwelling within us. Loving spirit dwell in me. That's what we said during the meditation. This is my divinity. And what it is that loving spirit is a part of the ecosystem of our own spirituality. The first words of the Dhammapada, which are the sayings of Buddha, are these: we are what we think. All that we are arises from our thoughts. With our thoughts, we make the world. Well, it's certainly true that with our thoughts, we make the world that we see. Wow. Now that statement could either be a burden or a joy, depending upon your awareness level. When we become aware enough to know that we're divine, it's certainly a joy to know that our thoughts make up our world. In the reading today, we heard these messages, and I think they're worth repeating. Spending time in mindful contemplation increases my awareness of my surroundings. Spending time in prayer increases my awareness of God's goodness. My awareness of God in and as my life has opened my eyes, my ears, my mind, and my heart. You know, there was a young man and he was an apprentice to Nan. And after 10 years of apprentices, this young man, Tenno, achieved the rank of Zen teacher. And one rainy day, he went to visit the famous master. And when he walked in, the master asked him a question. "Did you leave your wooden clogs and umbrella on the porch?" "Yes," Tenno replied. "Tell me," the master continued, "did you place your umbrella to the left of your shoes or to the right?" And it was then, when Tenno did not know the answer to that question, that he realized he had not yet obtained full awareness. So he became Nan's apprentice for yet another 10 years. It's amazing sometimes, I think, how we move through our daily lives and we're very unaware of some of the things that are happening right around us. Let's get back to that reef for a minute. Did you know that in the reef, some animals just swim through and they use it for cover? And I suspect that there's times in our spirituality that we're just swimming through life, not truly aware of our spirituality or the way that the divine shows up in our lives. And yet, we're using our spirituality to help us move along. There are other animals that attach to the reef and anchor themselves and become rooted in it. As we become more alive and awake, we become more aware of how being rooted in our spirituality, having spiritual practices be a part of our daily lives, helps us to find our joy and our peace and our freedom. When we're anchored in our spirituality, we know who we've come here to be. Spirituality is a lot like muscles. They require attention to grow. And if we were going to the gym to build muscles, we'd have to practice a lot. We'd have to make a routine. The same is true, I think, with our spirituality muscles. We need a routine. We need to learn to practice and to have a consistent practice. I know that there are days when I get up in a rush and I don't spend as much time on my spiritual practices as I would like. And if I fail to get centered at the beginning of the day, then if I have things that are going wrong, I don't handle them as well as I do on days when I take the time to center myself in spirit when I wake up. We can go through having these human experiences being very difficult, or we can wake up every day and just ask Spirit to be our guide, to let Spirit's light go before us in everything we do. Ralph Waldo Trine, in Tune with the Infinite, said this: "Within yourself lies the cause of whatever enters into your life. To come into the full realization of your own awakened internal powers is to be able to condition your life in exact accord with what you would have it be. To come to the full realization of your own awakened interior powers is to have your life be what it is you want it to be. When I feel to be alive, awake, and aware to my interior powers, my life is not nearly as good or as God-filled as it would be when I know that what lies within me, that my own thoughts are deeply rooted in spirituality. Sometimes we're just swimming through. And other times we really need to learn to be rooted, to use that spiritual reef so that we're definitely knowing who we are and what we've come here to be. Do you want to contribute to the beauty of your spiritual reef? I'm sure you do. So remember to be alive in spirit, to be awake in spirit, to be aware that who you are can thrive no matter what. This week, think about the role that you want to play in the coral reef of your spirituality. Do you want to just be passing through, enjoying the structure for a little while that other people have built? Or do you want to become a part of something bigger than you are and shine for everyone else to see? Do you come and go? Or do you definitely want to be rooted in spirituality? Chris Michaels said this: "The kingdom of heaven is a state of consciousness of self-awareness. It's a place we arrive at in consciousness when we are aware of our oneness with life." So what's the one choice that you're going to make today? To stay in your spirituality, to stay awake to the path before you and aware of all that is, aware of all that is, aware of God in and as you, opening your eyes, your ears, your heart, and your mind. Thank you very much. Have a great week.